You're listening to Talk of Champions, an Ole Miss Spirit podcast with Ben Garrett.
It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time!
Welcome in to an all-new edition of Talk of Champions here at RiverLand Roofing in Oxford, Mississippi. I'm Ben Garrett, that's Spirit Ben on Twitter. That's my guy Jake, a documentarian who is spending all season with Ole Miss this season. He's a New York Yankee from New York, right?
I'm a New York Yankee who is a Yankee.
Do you actually support the Yankees?
That's why I said I'm a Yankee who's a Yankee. I'm a big Yankee fan for sure.
Okay, get the bass out of your voice, Jakey, okay? All right, I'm just making sure because the Mets are actually, doing the thing for the first time since the 80s. And as a Braves fan who had to watch the Braves deal with the season from hell with all the injuries, I'm just glad to know that, well, actually I'm not. I was wanting to make fun of you because I hate the Mets. But
I have nothing against the Mets, by the way. The only New York team I grew up really disliking are the Jets. There are two, the Jets and the Rangers. I'm not a Jets fan.
Well, that's good. Unfortunately, you're a Giants fan. I'm a Cowboys fan.
I am a Giants fan.
It's complicated. So Eli's your guy.
Eli was my guy growing up and will be my guy forever, for sure.
All right, did that Eli Manning love, because you're here in Oxford, Mississippi all year, was that born strictly from the Giants, or, now that you've gotten deep into the Ole Miss angle of it, has it strengthened that fandom even more for you?
No, it was really the Giants. I mean, he won me 2 Super Bowls as a kid, and I say we because I genuinely felt as a child that I was a part of the team. Yeah. And that was just my guy. You remember a few people their whole career. Like I remember going to the Meadowlands when he was drafted for the unveiling party. I remember being at his first start. I was there for all of it. So a lot of great memories. Had nothing to do with coming to Ole Miss, and that was a myth that I had to really debunk and still really debunk because I love Eli. And like I said, I will always love Eli. And you couldn't think of a better role model or athlete to look up to as a kid. But I very much wanted to debunk this whole idea that I came down here on a sort of pilgrimage to find my childhood hero's roots. I told you about how I ended up here. It was very, very much a different methodology where I was looking for a school that was football crazy and had a football-rich tradition, but was a little bit more under the radar, where I thought I'd be able to ingratiate myself and ingrain myself into the community more because it would be less saturated than Alabama or Georgia. And when I made a list of all the SEC schools, Ole Miss ranked top of the list in cumulative points. I made 12 categories that I was looking for, and Ole Miss was there, and I was like, this is where I got to do it. And didn't know a person here. The only person I knew who went to Ole Miss was Eli, and I guess Evan Engram too.
And Brian Scott Rippey. Shout out to our guy.
Well, I didn't know him then. I didn't know Rippey until
Rip's a dumbass anyway. We can just
I didn't know Rippey until Denson introduced us. But when I decided to go ahead and do this project,
Hollis of OMAF. Let's give him his shouts too. Correct. They got some deals going. OMAF is great to us. So shouts to OMAF.
Shout out to OMAF.
So Denson
Denson was the one who forwarded my email, or my email got forwarded along to Denson, and he put me in touch with Rippey and Jeffrey Yost and a couple other people who were tremendous in helping me with the pilot episode last year, because basically I just said, this is the school I want to do it at. The only place where I had a connection at an SEC school was Kentucky. And I had a friend of a friend who was a booster there, and he said, come down and everything will be taken care of. You'll be able to have a great pilot episode. And all I kept thinking in my head is, if I'm going to spend 5 figures of my own money making this pilot episode, not even to try and sell it, just to try, or not even to try and sell that episode, just to try and use it as a visual resume to get funding for a bigger project. Right. I can't waste my one chance on Kentucky. I need somewhere where football is just really deeply ingrained in the heartbeat of everything. And I mean, this place just really, something in my gut told me I had to come here, and I just cold emailed everyone. And thank you, Jenny Johnson, for forwarding my email to Denson. Thank you, Denson, for connecting me to Rippey, and thank you to Rippey for connecting me to so many people, and thank you to Keith Carter who was one of those people. And I mean, I can't say enough good about Keith. This project wouldn't happen without him and his support. He is the best athletic director in the country for a reason, and that reason is he's an incredible, incredible person. And in addition to being a wickedly smart and sharp and on the ball athletic director, at his core, he's just an awesome person. So,
well, it's interesting. One name I didn't hear in thanks was Ben, and you're sitting on my Talk of Champions podcast. What the heck, Jakey?
Well, I didn't know you last.
Thank you, Ben.
I didn't know you last year, Ben. Thank you very much for having me here, and thank you for the whole dramatic pump up that you did off camera. That really made me feel special, considering you really just plop down and do the Ivy League without the whole 3-2-1. Like,
well, I actually, and I wear and dress like I'm a professional with you. With Jay, I was wearing a hoodie and swim trunks, which is normal. But I thought, you're a professional documentarian, right? And I gotta dress up for you. So, take the compliment. But this is Talk of Champions. I've been Garrett. I Spirit been on Twitter. Where can they find your stuff?
They can find us at Yank and the Sip on Instagram and TikTok. That's where we put all our behind-the-scenes content.
And what is the project exactly?
It's just a total cultural immersion into the SEC and what it's like to live in one of these communities where college football is everything emotionally and everything economically and everything in between. Because I grew up in New York, and like I said, I was a huge Giant fan. I went to games every Sunday and had a lot of great memories growing up tailgating with my family and friends and sitting in the same seats every week. So I understood the power football had to bring communities together, because it is a full day of the week. It's not baseball or basketball or hockey or one of these sports you go for a couple hours after work. You plan your whole day around it. Mm-hmm. That being said, in New York, 80,000 people go to games in a metropolitan area of 18 million. It doesn't even make a dent in that day's activities, really, when you think about it. Sure, people go, but it's like you go around the city, you look around the area, you wouldn't even know a game's going on unless you were right near the stadium. But in Oxford, Mississippi, that's not the case. 30,000 people live in town, and 67,000 are now going to games, and then another 200,000 come in for the weekend. Yeah. So the whole inverted nature of it relative to pro sports in a major market is fascinating to me, and how it really takes every single person here to make the whole concept and the whole experience, as special as it is, from every restaurant owner to every bar owner to, even like, for example, Oxford Floral, and my friend David, he has an unbelievable business, but when you think of floral businesses in New York, you don't think of anything related to football, but David does so much for Grove Tents and for the Vaught Society dinner, and does so much related to football. And that's just an example of one business that does that. Everybody's business does that, and everybody plays a part. Even the professionally dressed podcast host sitting next to me right now. So,
hey, look, I used to never dress up for anything, because it was like my own little show of rebellion. Because you're in the Bible Belt, brother. This is Sunday school clothes for me. So I was wanting to be like, no, when I'm doing my thing, I'm gonna do my thing. But for you, I got dressed up with the collar just because this is special and what you're doing is special. Why Ole Miss, though? I mean, you mentioned all the stuff. I've heard that before. But what was the final push? I mean, what made Ole Miss the right spot? Because you had other options. I mean, you could have gone another place. You mentioned Kentucky, but I'm asking specifically about why you settled on Ole Miss, because was there something about this place particularly, and where they were as a program, and where they were going, where they've been, all that stuff that really drew you, maybe an underdog, something or other, maybe not the lack of traditional success or modern day success that you see with the Alabamas and the Georgias is happening now, but what really pushed Ole Miss over the top for you is that, man, this seems different, right, than everywhere else I've been.
I heard a lot of good things about Oxford as a college town, and I read Wright Thompson growing up, so I was familiar with Oxford. Mm-hmm. And obviously I knew about the Grove from being a college football fan. I didn't know exactly what it was like to be in it, but I knew that it existed and that it was sort of looked at as this mecca of tailgating. I knew about the 18-mile-per-hour speed limit, so I thought any campus that makes its speed limit after its most famous player is clearly very football crazy. And I knew that they had won a lot here in a different era. And I tell people here all the time, I think that's very important, even though we haven't won, and I say we now because I feel a part of it.
Yeah, he does. You hear?
Even though we haven't won an SEC championship since, when was it, 63?
Yeah, 60. Yeah.
I think it was 63,
Yeah,
right?
I've always just said the 60s because
Yeah.
I'm terrible at names and dates, you know? You've already told me your last name like 84 times and I forget it every time. You know
Don't worry about it. You'll get it the next time.
Yeah, Jake Sarachek. Did I get it?
There you go.
Baller. Is it at Jake Sarachek on Twitter, Instagram, and all
I
that
don't
stuff?
do
What is it? Or just Yank in the
anything
Sip?
personal on
Yank
any
in
of
the
it.
Sip.
It's all Yank in the Sip.
All right, so I'm going to just call you Yank in the Sip. That doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, call me Jake.
I'm going to call you Jake.
Whatever you want. Just don't call me Yank in the Sip.
Hey, so anyway, Yank in the Sip. What pushed Ole Miss over the top?
So I told you, I think before what I was getting at is when you have won at a place before and there's a real era of winning, even if the team hasn't won in a long time, it builds a real sense of community and tradition and love for your school. Because think about it, the generation older than you grew up hearing their parents talk to them about rooting for Ole Miss and winning national championships. And then you heard that from your grandparents, or you heard it from your parents who heard it from their parents. So it's like people are going to this Grove every week and people say, sure, we go to the Grove, win or lose, and that's a big thing here. But I tell people here, while that may be the case, and it certainly is, and it's very admirable, I don't think it would mean as much if it had never been like that in the past, because people go here and they think, not only are we going to have a great time and, spend the day with loved ones and get to go watch a football game, but we're continuing on a tradition at a place where they want, like, we're going to watch college football at a place where they've at one point won a lot of college football. So winning is always something that you think is possible here, even though people say, oh, we've experienced heartbreak and we've come to expect heartbreak. I think deep down, Ole Miss people really believe that they can win. So there is that level of like, we may be an underdog, but we believe we can be a winning underdog. And I thought that was also important to have, because I didn't want to cover like the perennial powerhouse either. It's not as good a story.
Sure.
I wanted a place where they're crazy about football and it bleeds into the whole culture and tradition of the place, but at the same time they're a little bit of an underdog, and you factor in the college town part of it and the arts culture here. You have Faulkner, who called this home. You have so many great writers here. You have a food scene. It's just like, it really was the complete package. And then from a football standpoint, I do know a little bit about college football, and I really thought this was a team last year that people were sleeping on at the start of the year. So I wanted to come down here because I thought I want to come for the biggest rivalry game, the Shoot the Pilot. And I want to come for that rivalry game and hope I have the chance to see something special. And I thought this is a pretty good Ole Miss team that people are sleeping on. And this is a pretty good LSU team because everybody thinks it's always a pretty good LSU team. And if I come for this game, the Magnolia Bowl in Oxford at the end of September, I might see a very competitive, exciting rivalry game that embodies everything that the SEC is about. And God bless me for taking that leap of faith. I saw a pretty good game.
Good. Let me ask you this then. You've gotten a lot of access that in a typical media, old days, because I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, what you're getting to do, walk with Keith after, during, before, after a game, shadow him. You're getting some access that you don't typically see in 2024, because Ole Miss has opened the doors for you in a lot of ways. I know it hasn't been perfect, because we're all human, I guess, and you probably run into some issues. But of all those little insider peaks that you've gotten, has anything really like grabbed you and going, oh shoot, that's something I never expected to see, or just really caught your eye for good, bad, indifferent? You know what I mean? Like, what of all that insider stuff, those times that you've gotten to be down there in rooms that most everyone else doesn't get to be in, what's kind of grabbed you so far?
I think I always pinch myself when I'm down there during the game and say that it's unbelievable that it came to this. Because, like I said, I showed up here last September. I didn't know a single person. I'd never met an Ole Miss person. I'd never spent any time in the state of Mississippi.
Now look at him. Now look at him.
Now I'm walking
He's
around
Lane Kiffin, like, this
dressed
is
like Lane
cosplaying.
Stuntdouble.
Yeah, you're cosplaying Lane Kiffin right now.
But like I said to, I think it was Keith the other week, when you're out there in the Grove and the band's playing rock and roll during the Grove show and you're surrounded by so many people who become lifelong friends and you're about to go watch a big college football game, it's like, where else would you rather be? And when I'm there and when I'm down on the field, if we're there filming for the week, it's like I pinch myself, like, I can't believe this is all really happening. And it definitely is encouraging for me, just as like a life lesson, that if you really, really love something and you put your heart into it, good things can come of it.
I'm proof positive of that, man. I remember I prayed coming out of college, coming out of Ole Miss. I was like, dear God, if I can just cover Ole Miss sports for a living, I will never complain again. Well, anybody that's been watching me or listening to me or reading my stuff for 20 years, you know I've been complaining like a son of a gun ever since then. So I messed up my end of it. But you're right, man. Pursuing passions is the most important thing. And I know his story. You know, I know when you decided to shut this thing down. I don't know how much you want to speak on this, but you had a moment in your life, right, where you really said, it's time to focus on what I'm passionate about, go after it. When did that crystallize for you, that like this approach, the documentary crew, college football, the community, because it is unique. It is a unique community and fellowship and things like that. But when did you decide it's time? Like, let's pursue the passion.
To do this idea or
Just in general because I was going to be an accountant. You know what I mean? I thought that's what you were supposed to do. So was there anything like that for you? Again, I know what you're going to talk about here, the incident that you had, but I'm just saying, when did it crystallize for you?
Protecting homes and businesses from the whims of nature, you need more than just quality materials. You require RiverLand Roofing. Licensed, insured, and certified, RiverLand Roofing offers not only the assurance of excellence, but a tailored approach to your unique structural needs and budget. To learn more about what RiverLand Roofing can do for you and the community, call them at 662-644-4297 or visit riverlandroofing.com.
I guess to shed a little color on what you just mentioned, I was in a really big accident when I was a kid. I was hit by a car at 16 years old. I was going 60 miles an hour. It put me into a coma for a week. Had a really bad traumatic brain injury. Missed most of my last 2 years of high school. And for the first few years after that, I didn't really put much effort into fully getting myself back to being 100%, because it's really hard to come back from an injury like that. And like I always tell people, there's no cast for your brain. When I got off crutches, because I shattered my left femur, everybody, out of the wheelchair, off crutches, everybody thinks you're fine, but your brain still isn't working right. And that was really hard for me, because it was like everyone was moving on in life without me, and I felt like I was getting left behind, and I didn't really take the steps to address it. I just kind of tried to distract myself with whatever it may be to take my mind off of that things that used to be easy for me were now not so easy for me. And then when I was 21, a friend of mine from high school, who I'd lost touch with a little bit, but she was a good friend from high school and an unbelievable person, was tragically killed in an accident very similar to me. And at that point, I just felt like, going back home and being at her funeral and seeing how close it really could have been to me and how tragic it really all was. And it was a very, very eerie day, and one that really left an imprint on me. And after that, I just basically said, I gotta try every day, because life is really a gift. I really, at that moment, understood how precious life is and what a gift every day is, and just vowed at that point that I was going to make the most of every day. And being an adult, or coming into adulthood at that time, I realized that adults, we spend a lot of our time working. And if I didn't love what I did,
worrying about our work,
and worrying about our work, of course. Well,
especially
worrying about your work when you don't like what it is you're worrying about, it makes it multiplies and magnifies those worries. So it's like, if I'm going to put this much into something and worry about it, and have something that's going to take up so much of my time and all of that, I sure as hell have to love it. And I always loved storytelling and sports, and I knew I wanted to work in one of the two. And
why not both?
I didn't think of both at the time, actually. I spoke to a bunch of people who worked in sports, and they all told me that they stopped being fans. And I always said, watching sports as a fan and being able to enjoy that part of my life, it's the only thing I like as much as I did when I was 5 years old, besides for ice cream at 21.
That sound like me, man.
I wanted to preserve it. So I figured I'd work in storytelling, because I loved writing, I loved film, I loved doing all that stuff. And I never thought I would do anything sports related. I didn't for the first few years of my career. And then everything stopped during COVID, and that became the point where parents and outside pressure was like, it's time to get a real job. And it was the first time I really doubted myself, and I ended up giving in, going to law school.
Boo.
Yeah, that was a tough day. The first day of law school was the worst day of my life, and I had some tough days recovering.
I was going to say, you've had a pretty blessed life then, buddy.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the worst.
Well,
you got hit by a car, and law school was the worst. That place must have really sucked.
It just like, it wasn't even that, like, obviously, look, I was healthy, right? And like, it sounds,
He wasn't doing what he wanted to be doing. I'm messing with you, but
you get it. You get it. You felt it. I felt it in my gut that I was going against my heart's compass, and it's really, really tough every day to get up and know you're betraying what you feel in your heart, and that's what I think was really tough for me. And I had always sort of had this idea that gnawed at me in the back of my mind. Well, what if I just got a camper van or an RV and spent a season in the SEC and went to each town for a big game week and did it very much like Anthony Bourdain, who was like a hero of mine when I was younger, because I just loved how he would ingratiate himself and ingrain himself into these cultures to learn about their food.
to where mine was like Dan Patrick, so it makes so much sense. You know, I just want to be like, and Ole Miss.
Well, I had a couple heroes,
That's
but
awesome, dude.
I loved Anthony.
I love that.
And I just always felt that's such an applicable principle to sports, because it's all about communities that make sports special. You know, and we were talking about this yesterday, and obviously, look, athletes don't care about what fans say or think, and nor should they. It's not, you know, they have absolutely no reason to, because they control the whole impact of the game, and fans don't at all. And so the athletes need to stay present and neutral and focus on the game, 100,000,000%. But at the same time, you know, the whole experience is not the same if they're playing a game in front of an empty stadium versus the 102,000 we'll see in Death Valley on Saturday night. It's just, that's what makes sports really special. And I just always felt it was overlooked in the sports content space, where it was always about the players and the coaches and the practices and the film study. And I thought this principle that Bourdain had sort of proven by embedding himself into communities could kind of be, I don't want to say replicated, but done in its own way. And it just started gnawing at me, because I wanted to get back to doing something.
That's God calling, baby. That's what that is. Ain't
Well,
no stopping that.
I'll tell you also what it was with God calling. It was God telling me that, look, here's an idea. The hardest part about making films is you need a lot of money, because you need your crew, and then you need your actors, and you need the whole distribution and everything. So I started thinking, what could I do creatively that could be done in theory, like without much of a crew in terms of manpower?
And these guys are awesome.
These guys are top
wearing Ole
notch.
Miss gear too. We got to get them better Ole Miss swag. Though.
They're top notch, but as you see, it's
two of them.
Two of them. And then Heather,
Heather's
our
awesome.
superstar producer.
Yeah.
And then we have a few students who help out, but it's really a small crew. And that's kind of how you have to look at any sort of creative undertaking when you're starting, especially in film. What can I do that can be a great story and it's cost efficient? And this one really spoke to me because there were no actors. And it could be done with one camera and maybe a second at times, but really with a small crew, because you're just making kind of I think the word is pronounced guerrilla, the one with the G-U-E.
Guerrilla marketing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or like Rage Against the Machine, Guerrilla.
Yeah,
Radio.
more
That's
like great song.
Dude, right?
Yeah.
We got another Rage fan. Dude,
Yeah.
are we vibing right
Yeah,
now?
I
Let's
think
go.
we're vibing.
go.
That opening guitar sequence
Dude,
psychs me up.
Dude.
Anyway,
Sorry. Getting hyped about Rage. Go.
we might have to listen to it after. Anyway, I felt like this idea can really be done now. And it just sort of gnawed at me through my first year of law school. And I remember one night I went out for dinner with a friend, and I was really, really down on my situation being in law school and how my whole creative career kind of went off track. And I just started venting to him about it. And I'll shout out my friend, David Wilds.
So, Dave,
He said to
great.
me, we're sitting at dinner, and he goes, dude, if you don't do this or try and do it, I'll never talk to you again.
good man.
And I was just like, I
advice.
gotta do it. And basically I pitched it to a couple people, and one of the people I pitched it to took an interest in me and said, look, it's a really good idea, but you're a nobody who's never accomplished anything.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, you've only made a couple short films and worked on a number of sets. Nobody's going to, as an assistant, nobody's going to do this for you. But if you go out there and self-fund a proof of concept at one school and show what that looks like, you're no longer pitching people an idea, like I said. So that's how the whole thing ended up. Because basically after my first year of law school, which was the tough year, I said...
Not getting hit by the car.
Not getting hit by the car. I said, that was a good one.
Sorry.
I'm going to count on more of that humor the next time I see you at one of your shows.
Yeah, that's fine. What I was
I hope to keep it coming.
Is you brought up LSU and you brought up Death Valley, and I don't mean to make light of a traumatic event in your life, obviously. I'm just picking with Jake. He's a great dude. And I know what you've been through with this project, both good and bad, ups and downs. It's hard. It's hard to make art, to make it good, and for it to be seamless, it's impossible. So doing great work, yanking the sip. But before we get out of here, you mentioned, we opened talking about Eli. Then you brought up LSU. Is this your first trip to LSU?
This is only my third SEC stadium. South Carolina last week was my first, so yes.
You have no idea what you're walking into, buddy. It's the best. Well, it's not going to be like it used to be. It used to be nighttime in Death Valley. That's where nightmares happen, brother. I mean, I had a beer bottle after beer bottle thrown at my head. You can't imagine the things. Ole Miss has not won there since 2008. I would imagine, before I jump into this real quick about LSU, that you came down here because Ole Miss is a national title contender in the college football playoff this year. That loss to Kentucky had to make you go, oh gosh, this could be, or was it like, oh, this is adversity. Let's see what happens. I mean, what did you learn about this team?
You got to find the story regardless.
Right. What did you learn about this though with that Kentucky loss?
So I tell everyone, and I told this to the athletic department, it's not my job to be a journalist or to be someone who comments on the team.
That's right.
I'm much more involved in the whole community and culture aspect of it. And a lot of that has to do with, the fan culture and, like I said, the overall community culture. So you got to find the story regardless. But as someone who has seen the leadership on this team and seen the coaching on this team, you just got to continue to believe in them because they're capable of it. And I think I said this on Instagram last week. A little adversity early has never hurt anyone, and it often is very good for the soul. Too much adversity late is not good, but a little adversity early only makes the story that much sweeter. And I think we saw that this team can handle adversity early, and you got to believe in them here this week. Going on the road at Death Valley, it's like I've been saying, and like Lane said before the season, we're all about going, 1-0 every week.
See, like he's even doing he's like looking like him, talking like him.
We got to go 1-0 every week,
Every week.
That's it. 1-0 every week.
Yeah.
And that's something I said to people when I came down here in August, and I don't think I vocalized it enough because I came down here, and you're right, 100%. A big reason why I came here now and took my third year of law school off and put it on hold is because
forever, hopefully,
because this team is a national championship contender, and to have that opportunity to make a season-long immersion project about what it's like to live in an SEC town where a place that loves its team as much as anyone gets a season many people here have been waiting their entire lives for is really a special it's a special opportunity that doesn't come along. And people said to me, why don't you just do this next year when you finish law school? And I said, this team isn't waiting for next year. They're not waiting for anyone. So that definitely was a part of it. That being said, you have to look for the story regardless. So, and there's always a story to tell about how a community, I guess, is in love with and interacts with its team, regardless of how the on-field success of the team occurs. But when I came here in August at the beginning of the season, everybody around town was talking. Oklahoma is going to be the most people ever in Oxford at one time.
Probably so.
Georgia, we might get game day. Or not we might. Georgia, we will get game day. You won't be able to walk on Oxford Square past Wednesday. You won't be able to drive starting on Monday. And it's like, I'm listening to this and thinking about this, and I grew up a neurotically superstitious fan. My grandpa, just so you know, during Super Bowl 42, my grandfather, at the start of the fourth quarter, we were at the game, he went out to the concession stand and bought me a second bottle of water. I was halfway done with my first.
I thought he was going to get you something good to drink.
I was halfway done with my first. and he goes to me, "We've been playing unbelievable on defense so far, but we haven't been playing great on offense. You drink the original water bottle when we're on defense, and you drink this new one I got you when we're on offense."
No, he did not.
Swear.
I love that.
So I grew up believing that I had the ability to impact games, which obviously was very damaging for a young kid and took a lot of deprogramming.
Dude, I still people go,
yeah.
what's the worst sports moment of your life? I'm like, well, your guy Keith Carter, my guy too. I love Keith Carter to death. But when before he was AD, he was a star basketball player here, legendary. And when I was 10 years old, and Valpo, Bryce Drew made the shot, my guy Keith was guarding the baseline. I've asked him about this countless times. I'm not busting him out. He still doesn't have a good explanation. He knows he shouldn't have been guarding the baseline, but that's more Rod than Keith. Anyway, when Bryce hit that shot, when I say as a 10-year-old, I never felt true despair before, I don't think. So I totally get what you're saying. Like you, in this culture, what you're kind of tapping into here is something that not many are familiar with, but it's everybody. To where you were a crazy superstitious like us up there, there's a whole culture down here where it feels like everybody. Not necessarily, but it
same
feels
thing.
that way. Yeah, it feels that way. But it's LSU week. Ole Miss is now back, rebounded after stabilizing with a 27-3 win over South Carolina. Number 9 in the country. LSU is number 10. It's a huge game. Ole Miss is 5-1, 1-1 in the SEC. The SEC's wide open. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt as we're recording this. Missouri lost. Tennessee lost. I mean, there's just so much parity out there. It's exactly the kind of culture, or at least the kind of landscape that Ole Miss would want this year to make that expanded 12-team playoff. But LSU week specifically for Ole Miss is very important because it is a traditional rivalry. They have not won in Death Valley since 2008. I was there, 31-13. Mr. Jevin Sneed, God rest his soul. Mike Wallace, my dude, burning folks. But this weekend in Death Valley, is there anything, because I know you've been doing your prep, we do show prep for this kind of stuff, except me, I just sit down and start talking. My question is, what are you looking forward to the most? Because you got to check out some cool stuff at South Carolina. I didn't even know they had hippogriffs there. Like, I'm a Harry Potter nerd, and they have hippogriffs.
Buckbeak is outside the stadium. They have the world's biggest statue of Buckbeak.
Ever!
Maybe even bigger than the one they have at Universal.
Calm down. I've been there and know it's not. But still.
Do they have a statue of Buckbeak?
No, not that one. That looked pretty badass. I'm not going to lie. Now, I haven't seen the Buckbeak South Carolina statue. Now, Columbia, last time I was there was when Ole Miss in 2008 lost when they were number 4 in the country. Eric Norwood dominated that game off the edge. And I said I'd never go back because it was the loudest stadium. I mean, it was shaking that I'd ever heard before. And then I remember Death Valley exists. And it's like that every time LSU is good, if they're hosting somebody at Death Valley. Just promise me that you're going to be on the field the whole time and just absorb it. Hopefully LSU fans will step up. It's supposed to be a sold-out crowd. My guy Shay Dixon over there for On 3, the LSU On 3 site. I got the Ole Miss On 3 site. He said that tickets are impossible to come by, more ticket requests from families and stuff. This is going to be a zoo, man. So I think you're about to get the experience you have desperately been wanting this weekend in Death Valley. Just hopefully, Mr. Superstitious, if you come back with a loss, you can never go back again.
Well,
is that right?
It's funny you say about being on the field the whole time because we are foregoing being on the field to sit in the Ole Miss section because
that's better.
I want the whole.
They'll protect you.
I want the whole visiting fan experience.
Well, no, you don't, because then, like I said, you get a beer bottle at your head. You don't want that.
It'd be great content.
Dude, when content is king, that's how you know he's good. It ain't about me. It's about my content. There you go. But anyway, LSU, you got to be looking forward to that. I mean, that's a trip for us that we're used to taking in the South, Ole Miss people being around. But for you, this is a first. And now that you've been in this culture, going to see one of those traditional rivalries like they used to be and the craziness of it, again, it's got to be exciting for you.
100%. I mean, just last week, even going to Columbia and seeing Sandstorm in person, I say this to everyone, this is all stuff I grew up watching on TV every week, but it was like this faraway world. It's almost like if Hogwarts and Diagon Alley and all of that actually existed.
Yeah.
And you actually got to go and see it. That's like how it feels to me, because this was always so far behind the glass that I couldn't touch it because it took place in another part of the country. So to go there and actually see Sandstorm in person and go to the Cockabooses, that was really cool. And obviously Death Valley, I mean, to watch a college football game there and one as big as this one on a Saturday night in Baton Rouge, that has been number one on my sports bucket list for a very long time. So really, really jazzed up about the weekend and really psyched to see the boys go down there and look to go 1-0.
See, I know that Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, that's the in-state rival. That's the rival. That's the little brother. But when it comes to the Ole Miss rivalry games of rivalry games, and yes, traditional rivalries aren't the same as they used to. It's been de-emphasized, and for good reason, for Ole Miss especially. But this game right here, this is the most quintessential Ole Miss game and weekend. And I'm excited for you to go down there. Because, again, I know the work he's doing. It's yanking the sip. Great work. And when is the project? Do you have an idea of when you want to release it or when you want to have it done?
We're looking to get it done and out by next summer. I mean, we're going to have 500 hours plus of footage that we have to go through.
I feel so bad for those guys over there.
They don't have to go through it.
Oh, thank God. They just got to capture it. Well, that's good. You got to go through it all?
Me and my editor, Kate, back in New Jersey, but she's the best. She'll do an unbelievable job with it.
Yeah. Well, look at him. See, hey, Kate, he's even giving you your shine, too. Good for you. See, that's how you know he's a pro. Check out his stuff. Yank in the Sip project coming out, the documentary project on Ole Miss's 2024-25 season. Expectations filled as it is. Possibly next summer. Hopefully next summer. That's what he's planning. But we're going to have him back on because I've got to know him. This is a cool, fun dude to talk to. So, hey, you want to come back and join me again? Here
I will come back and join you. And
okay.
I appreciate you saying that because there's one thing everybody knows about Ben. He's an honest guy. He doesn't say anything that he doesn't mean. So even though some may say that guy's just peacocking for the camera, he actually does mean it, and I appreciate it.
That's very cool of you to say, man. He's Jake. We'll be back after South Carolina, after LSU on Saturday, post-game show here on Talk of Champions. Just me. Maybe I'll drag Jake's ass, onto a camera from the field and be like, hey, Jake, so what was it like down? We'll see what we can come up with. But thank you, man, for doing this. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, are you going to give me one RiverLand Roofing before
RiverLand Roofing. This is the RiverLand Roofing Studios. We're here at RiverLand Roofing. RiverLandRoofing.com, 664-429-7 is the number to call for all your roofing needs. That's RiverLandRoofing.com. Did I hit it?
There we go. Nailed it.
That's how you
never
know,
misses.
Yeah, never. Well, slow down because now that's going to totally be a messed up thing next time.
It's like with the kickers where they're like, he's made 10 of his last 10 from 50-plus yards.
Yes, it's exactly right. And, dude, the next one, wide left. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
You got it. You're a man.